you look at today's energy crisis, the number one thing that is scary about it is that it is a crisis that has come from the net zero movement, not even only achieving 1% of their goals. So they have not even reduced the supply of fossil fuels. I want to stress that again. They haven't even reduced the supply. They just slowed its rate of growth. They already wanted to dramatically reduce the supply. That was their goal. We were supposed to be using way less fossil fuel by now. They just slowed the growth, and that was enough to cause a global energy crisis in a world that needs far more energy. So that should really wake us up. What if we actually start on their path of getting rid of fossil fuels? And again, we have 27 years now, 27 years and less than a month as we record this to achieve net zero, which in effect means getting rid of fossil fuels. We could talk about offsets and stuff, but that doesn't work at any scale that there's any evidence of. So it's really this homicidal movement in its consequences. And I do think people are waking up, and they're particularly waking up to the idea that, hey, we ignored the benefits of fossil fuels. What I call our designated experts did this. And these people need to be jettisoned. You cannot listen to anybody about energy and climate who ignores the benefits of fossil fuels to billions of people, because if you do, you get an energy crisis. And if we keep listening to them, it's going to get a lot worse.
Well, the other thing that you see being the drum being beaten on the side of the radical left, for example, is the anti-colonial, let's say this continual trumpeting of the anti-colonial interference message. And so then I look at that and I think, well, you give the devil his due, and the fact that the world's cultures have come into contact with one another in a dramatic way in the last 300 years has produced all sorts of consequences, some positive and some negative. But on the anti-colonial front, the environmental proposition, and this is mostly coming from the radical left, is that there's no possible way that the third world inhabitants can be allowed, much less encouraged, to develop a standard of living that in any manner approximates the profligate West. Is that we're rich and maybe we should suffer from that a bit and maybe we should pay reparations, let's say, but all those poor people who are desperately trying to clamber up the socioeconomic hierarchy so they don't die, let's make that perfectly clear. They can't be allowed to do that because their environmental footprint will immediately become so large that the planet itself will be destroyed. And so, okay, what's the consequence of that? Well, the consequence of that is that they should be poor and stay that way and should shut the hell up about it and should be happy about it. And perhaps there should be a hell of a lot fewer of them. And if that doesn't trigger your anti-colonialist morality, then you've got some serious thinking to do, because I just don't understand at all how it is that those of us in the wealthy West, and this would certainly include those in the chattering environmental glitterati elite class, I have no sense whatsoever how they're in a moral position to be lecturing the developing world about how they should accept limits to growth, which means, for example, that their children won't have access to enough nutrition to even optimize their brain development as they mature. It's like, oh, that's the price those people get to pay, eh? Those people, those poor people in developing countries who don't get to be wealthy, and by wealthy means have enough to eat and have schools to send their children. And we in the Western world, we can sit on our high horse and say, well, we used fossil fuels and oops, sorry about that and all the carbon, but you bastards, you can just accept your lot. And if you stop breeding so goddamn much, that would be a good thing too. Now, how that is colonial to a degree that's overwhelming is beyond me.
You smart, you loyal, you grateful. I appreciate that. You smart, you loyal,